When I first bought my parents that house, I thought it was the happiest day of my life. It was the kind of white-painted dream home they'd always talked about when I was a kid. Big porch, old oak tree in the yard, and windows that caught the sunset just right. I'd spent 10 years working my way up from freelance designer to creative director, skipping vacations, saying no to luxuries, telling myself it would all be worth it when I could finally give them the life they deserved. When I handed my father the keys that day, he didn't say much, but the way his eyes softened told me everything. My mother cried, hugging me like I'd brought the sun inside with me. For a while, it felt perfect. Weekends became family barbecues, and every time I visited, the smell of my mother's cooking and the sound of Dad humming in the garage filled the air. I'd sit on the porch at dusk and tell myself this right here was what success was supposed to feel like. It wasn't about money. It was about giving love a place to live. But perfection, I've learned, has an expiration date. It started small. Calls went unanswered. Texts got short. Then one evening, when I decided to drop by unannounced, the porch light was off. No laughter, no music, just silence. I rang the bell twice before a man I didn't know opened the door. "Can I help you?" he asked, polite but confused. Behind him, I could see boxes stacked in the hallway. My stomach knotted. "I'm looking for my parents," I said. He hesitated. "The former owners? They moved out last week." I blinked. "Former owners?" He nodded. "I just bought the place. Closed the deal last Friday." For a moment, I couldn't even process the words. My parents had sold the house, my gift to them, without saying a word. My voice shook when I asked, "Did they leave a forwarding address?" He checked a paper in his hand. "Yeah, there's a number, but maybe you should talk to the buyer's agent. She handled everything." "Who bought it?" I asked, though something deep in my chest already knew. He gave me a name that felt like ice water down my spine. Evan Miller. My ex, the man I hadn't seen in 2 years, the one who'd left me when I needed him most. My heartbeat roared in my ears. Evan, the same Evan who'd promised me forever, who'd vanished when things got hard, who told me I was too focused on fixing everyone else's life instead of living my own. I stood there on the porch of the house I'd bought with years of sacrifice, staring at the man inside who now called it his, feeling like the world had tipped sideways. I drove home in silence, my hands shaking on the steering wheel, my mind spinning between disbelief and betrayal. By the time I reached my apartment, the questions were coming faster than my tears. Why would they sell it? Why to him? How could they hide something like this? I tried calling my father first, no answer. Then my mother, voicemail. I sent a message, "We need to talk, now." Hours passed, no reply. The next morning, a text came through from my mom. "Sweetheart, please don't be upset. It's not what you think. We'll explain soon." Not what I think. Those 4 words burned through me like acid. I stared at the photo on my wall, the 3 of us in front of the house the day they moved in, all smiles, all trust. I thought about how my father had squeezed my shoulder that day and said, "You've given us a home, not just a house." And now it was gone, sold to the one man who'd already taken so much from me. That afternoon, I drove back to that street, parked across from the house, and sat there for a long time. Evan's car was in the driveway. I recognized it instantly, the same black SUV that used to sit outside my apartment when we were together. For a second, I imagined marching up, demanding answers, but I couldn't move. Instead, I just watched as he stepped out onto the porch, phone in hand, looking older but still unbearably familiar. He stood there, scanning the yard, and then, as if sensing me, his eyes lifted straight toward my car. Our gazes met across the street, 2 ghosts trapped between past and present. I started the engine before he could cross over. As I drove away, I caught one last glimpse of him in the rearview mirror, still standing there, watching as if he knew that the truth neither of us wanted was about to surface. By the time I reached my parents' temporary apartment the next morning, I'd rehearsed every version of what I wanted to say. Angry, calm, rational, broken. But the second my mother opened the door, all of it fell apart. The place was small, nothing like the home I'd given them. Plain white walls, boxes half unpacked, the smell of takeout replacing her usual cinnamon candles. She looked tired, older somehow, as if the move had taken more than just her energy. "Sweetheart," she said softly, stepping aside, but I didn't move. "Why?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Why would you sell the house? Why didn't you tell me?" She sighed, rubbing her temples. "It's complicated. You always say that when you don't want to explain something." My father appeared from the hallway then, holding a mug of coffee, his shoulders slumped. "Elena, please sit down. Let's talk." "No," I snapped. "I don't want coffee. I want the truth." He set the mug down slowly, like someone defusing a bomb. "We didn't plan to sell it," he began. "Then what happened?" He glanced at my mother, and something silent passed between them. A look I'd seen 1,000 times before, the kind that said, "Don't tell her yet." But I wasn't the little girl they could protect anymore. "If you don't start talking," I said, "I'm walking out that door and never looking back." My mother sank into the couch, her hands twisting in her lap. "We were falling behind, Elena," she said finally. "On bills, on everything. After your father's surgery last year, the insurance only covered part of it. Then the market tanked, and I would have helped." I interrupted. "You know I would have." "We know," my father said quietly, "and that's exactly why we didn't tell you." I stared at them, disbelief twisting in my chest. "You didn't tell me because you didn't want my help?" My mother nodded weakly. "You've already done enough. Too much. Every time we turned around, you were sacrificing for us. Your time, your money, your happiness. We couldn't keep taking." I pressed my hands to my face, trying to steady my breath. "So instead, you sold the one thing I gave you to feel like I'd finally done something right?" "It wasn't like that," my father said. "We thought we'd have more time. The bank was threatening foreclosure if we didn't pay the loan balance. Your mother panicked. We listed it quietly, hoping we could buy it back once things stabilized." "Buy it back?" I laughed bitterly. "You sold it to Evan, my ex, the man who broke my heart." My mother's eyes widened. "You know?" "Of course I know," I said. "You thought I wouldn't find out who owns my parents' address now?" My father leaned forward, guilt etched deep in his face. "We didn't know he was the buyer. It was a private sale through a firm. We didn't even meet him until closing day. When he walked into the office, I almost called the whole thing off." I folded my arms, glaring. "But you didn't." "Because," she whispered, "he offered more than anyone else, and he said it was non-negotiable. He wanted to keep the house in the family." I froze. "What?" "That's what he said," she continued, voice trembling. "He didn't want strangers living there. He said it meant something to him." I sank into the chair opposite them, my heart thudding. "He bought it on purpose," I murmured. "He knew." My father sighed. "He asked us not to tell you until he could explain it himself. He said you wouldn't believe us." "He's right," I said flatly. "I don't." I stood up, pacing the small room, the carpet muffling my footsteps. Every memory of that house flashed through my mind like a cruel film reel. My mother cooking, my father humming, Evan helping me hang lights on the porch before everything fell apart. "You should have told me," I said finally. "We couldn't," my mother whispered. "We were ashamed. And then when Evan came into the picture, we thought maybe it was fate. Maybe he could fix what we broke." I turned sharply. "Fix it? By buying your silence? By owning the last piece of me I was proud of?" My father reached out, but I stepped back. "Elena," he said softly, "I know how it looks, but sometimes the people who hurt you still try to make it right." I shook my head, eyes burning. "I can't believe you'd take his money. I can't believe you'd sell my trust like that." My mother stood, tears streaking her face. "We didn't sell your trust. We sold our pride to protect you. You think he bought that house for himself? He bought it for you." The words stopped me cold. "What are you talking about?" Ask him, she said simply. He's the only one who can explain. I wanted to scream, to walk away, to slam the door on all of it, but instead, I just stood there, numb, staring at the two people who'd raised me and realizing that maybe I didn't know them at all. Outside, the sky had turned gray, heavy with rain, the kind that makes the whole world feel like it's holding its breath. I turned toward the door, keys already in my hand. "Where are you going?" my father asked quietly. To see the man who apparently still thinks he gets to decide what my life looks like. And before either of them could stop me, I walked out, leaving the door half open behind me, just like every promise they'd ever made. By the time I reached the old neighborhood, the rain had already started. Soft at first, then steady, drumming against the windshield in an unbroken rhythm that felt too much like the sound of my own heartbeat. The house sat at the end of the street just as it always had, but something about it felt different now, quieter, heavier, like it knew it no longer belonged to the same story. The porch lights were on, glowing through the rain, and for a moment I almost expected my father to open the door, call me kiddo, and tell me everything was fine. But it wasn't. The man behind that door wasn't my father anymore. It was Evan. I parked across the street, sat there for a minute, trying to steady my breathing. 2 years ago, this same man had walked out of my apartment without looking back, leaving behind a half-packed suitcase and an apology that sounded more like a favor. "You care about everyone but yourself," he'd said. "One day that's going to break you." I told him he was wrong. Now, sitting here, drenched in betrayal from all sides, I wasn't so sure. When I finally stepped out, the cold rain hit me like truth. Sharp, inescapable, cleansing and cruel all at once. I crossed the yard and knocked. For a few seconds, nothing. Then the lock clicked, and there he was, standing in the doorway in a gray sweater and jeans, rainlight catching in his eyes. He looked older, tired, but the way his expression softened when he saw me hit harder than I expected. "You came," he said quietly. "You were expecting me?" "I hoped you would," he admitted. I pushed past him into the foyer, my voice clipped. "You bought my parents' house." "Yes." "Why?" He sighed, closing the door behind me. "Because they were about to lose it." "You mean because you wanted to own the last piece of me you could?" He winced. "It's not like that." "Then tell me what it is, Evan," I snapped. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like pity disguised as generosity. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous tic I knew too well. "Your dad came to me," he said finally, "months ago. He didn't ask for money. He asked for time." I frowned. "Time?" "He knew they were falling behind on payments. He didn't want to burden you. He thought he could fix it, refinance, something. But when the foreclosure notice came, he panicked. He didn't want you to find out, so he came to me." My throat tightened. "Why you?" "Because he knew I'd still care," he said simply. "Because no matter what happened between us, he knew I'd never let you lose what you built." I laughed, bitter and shaking. "So what? You bought it out of guilt? Some grand act of penance?" "No," he said softly. "Out of love." The words landed heavy, absurd. "You don't get to say that," I whispered. "Not after everything." He stepped closer. "You think I wanted to walk away? I left because you were drowning, Elena. You were saving everyone but yourself. Your family, your job, even me. I couldn't compete with the part of you that needed to fix everything. I thought maybe if I left, you'd finally start choosing you." And instead, I said coldly, "You chose to buy my family's silence." He shook his head. "I bought their house so they wouldn't lose it to strangers. I put it in a trust. Your name's on it too. You still own it." I blinked, stunned. "What?" "I didn't buy it for me," he said, voice low. "I bought it for you. I was trying to protect the one good thing you gave them. It's yours, Alina. It's always been yours." For a second, the room felt too small, the air too thick. "I'm lying," I said, but my voice cracked. "Check the deed. It's in the drawer by the kitchen. I've been paying the mortgage, not them. I didn't want you to find out this way." I stared at him, searching his face for the lie, the manipulation, the self-righteousness I was sure had to be there. But there was only exhaustion and something deeper. Regret. "Why didn't you just tell me?" I asked. "Because you wouldn't have listened. Because back then anything that came from me sounded like betrayal." He was right, and that hurt more than anything. The rain outside grew louder, hammering against the windows, as if the world itself was demanding I break the silence. "I should have told me," I whispered. "I would have helped." "I know. That's what scared me. You would have given up everything again, and I couldn't let you." The anger that had carried me here began to unravel, leaving only confusion and a deep, aching sadness. I turned away, staring at the living room, the same couch my mother had chosen, the same curtains I'd hung myself. The house looked exactly as it did before, yet it felt like something else entirely now, a monument to every unspoken sacrifice. "I don't know what to do with this," I said finally. "Then don't," he replied. "You don't owe anyone forgiveness. Not me, not them. But at least know the truth before you decide." I looked back at him, and for the first time in 2 years, there wasn't anger between us, just the heavy silence of people who had both tried too hard to love the wrong way. "Keep the house for now. If it's in my name, I'll decide what happens to it later." He nodded, a sad smile flickering. "You're still the same," he said. "No," I replied, opening the door, rain washing over me as if the world had decided it was time to start clean again. By the time I reached my apartment, I was drenched to the bone, the rainwater running down my face, indistinguishable from tears I refused to acknowledge. I kicked off my shoes, dropped my keys, and leaned against the door, letting the weight of everything crash over me at once. The house, my parents, Evan, the letter in the drawer with my name on it. I had always thought betrayal was a sharp thing, quick and clean. But this was something heavier. It wasn't a knife, it was gravity. It pulled at everything inside me until all I could do was sit there on the floor, my breath shaky, my chest hollow. I thought of my parents in that cramped apartment, my mother's trembling hands, my father's tired eyes. They hadn't just sold the house to survive. They'd sold it to hide the truth that they were breaking, that their pride had cost them more than money could repay. And Evan, the man I'd once loved and sworn I'd never forgive, had stepped in quietly, without asking for credit, without demanding attention. He hadn't stolen anything. He'd simply tried to give back what I'd already lost, my sense of home. The next morning, I woke with the kind of exhaustion that goes deeper than sleep. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, weak and gray after the storm. My phone buzzed with a new message from my mother. "Can we talk, please?" I stared at it for a long time before replying. "I'll come by this afternoon." When I got to their apartment, my father opened the door this time. He looked smaller, like someone who had spent too long trying to shrink himself around guilt. "You look tired," he said. "So do you," I replied. My mother was in the kitchen, 2 mugs of tea already waiting on the table. steam curling in soft spirals between us. "We heard you saw Evan," she said carefully. "He told you everything?" "Enough," I said. "Enough to know you should have trusted me." She nodded slowly, her eyes glistening. "You're right. We should have. But parents aren't immune to fear, Elena. We were terrified of watching you give up more of yourself for us. You've carried this family since you were 22. We thought if we could fix things quietly, maybe you'd finally get to live for you." My father's voice was rough when he added, "When I went to him, I didn't go as your father. I went as a man who failed the people who depended on him. I didn't ask him to save us. I asked him to make sure you didn't find out how badly I'd failed." I swallowed hard. "You didn't fail me," I said quietly. "You failed yourself because you didn't trust that I loved you enough to understand." My mother reached for my hand, her fingers trembling. "We thought keeping you safe meant keeping you ignorant. We were wrong, and I'm so sorry." For the first time, I saw them not as the unshakable parents of my childhood, but as two flawed people who had spent their whole lives pretending they were stronger than they really were. I took a deep breath and nodded. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet," I said honestly, "but I can try." Tears spilled down my mother's cheeks, and she whispered, "That's all we can ask." My father exhaled shakily, his shoulders easing for the first time in months. "What about the house?" he asked. "What are you going to do with it?" I looked at them both, the weight of the question heavy between us. "I haven't decided. Maybe I'll sell it. Maybe I'll move in. Or maybe I'll just let it sit for a while. Not as a wound, but as a reminder." My mother frowned gently. "A reminder of what?" I managed a small smile. "That love isn't measured by how much we hide, but by how much truth we can bear together." We sat there for hours after that, talking about things we'd avoided for years. About Dad's surgery, Mom's panic, the years I'd spent trying to fill holes they didn't want me to see. The longer we talked, the more the anger began to loosen its hold, replaced by something quieter, more human. Forgiveness wasn't a moment, it was a process, and for the first time I felt like we were finally starting it. As I left, my mother followed me to the door. She said, "You know, Evan didn't just buy the house, he fixed it up too. The leaky roof, the fence, the porch steps, he said it was for you." I nodded, my chest tightening. "I know." "Will you talk to him again?" she asked. I hesitated, then looked out at the cloudy sky. "Maybe," I said. "Not because I owe him anything, but because I think we both deserve closure." On the drive home, the rain started again, softer this time, more forgiving. I rolled the window down just enough to feel the cool air against my face. The world smelled like renewal, wet earth, fresh beginnings. When I passed the old street, I slowed down. The house stood there, porch lights on, the oak tree swaying gently. It looked peaceful. Not mine, not theirs, just home. Waiting. I parked across the street, the same spot I'd sat in the day I found out it was gone. For a long moment, I did nothing but watch the windows glow. Then, almost without thinking, I got out and walked up to the gate. I didn't knock this time. I just stood there, letting the rain soak my hair, my clothes, my anger. In the window, I saw movement. Evan, standing inside, looking out. Our eyes met again through the glass, the same way they had that night. But this time there was no pain in it, just understanding.
He didn't come out, and I didn't go in. We didn't need to. Some things don't need to be rebuilt to be forgiven. Sometimes it's enough to know they still stand. When I finally turned away, the rain had stopped, and in its wake was something softer. Peace, fragile but real. For the first time, I realized that maybe love wasn't about holding on to what you built for others. Maybe it was about learning to build again, for yourself.
The following week felt like the calm after a hurricane, the kind that isn't silent but soft, the kind where you can finally hear your own heartbeat again. My apartment, once cluttered with resentment and unanswered questions, suddenly felt lighter, like even the walls had decided to stop holding their breath. For days, I kept circling around the same thought. The house, Evan, my parents, all of it had been built on good intentions tangled in pride. Everyone had been trying to save everyone else, and in the process, we'd all nearly drowned. But maybe that's what families do: break, rebuild, repeat, until they finally learn what love actually means. A week later, I got a call from the real estate lawyer handling the property. "Miss Torres," he said, "the house is still under your name. Mr. Miller transferred ownership back to you this morning. Full title, no debt attached." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. What? "He said it was never his to keep," the lawyer replied. "He asked me to tell you that the paperwork's in your mailbox. No need to respond." When I hung up, my hands were shaking. I walked to the window, the city below washed in gold from the afternoon sun, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel angry. I felt free. That evening, I drove back to my parents' apartment, the same little space that had felt so heavy before. My mother opened the door, eyes red but smiling, and my father looked up from the couch, relief softening the lines on his face. "He gave it back," I said simply. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh, honey!" "He said it was never his," I added quietly. My father exhaled. "He's a better man than I thought." "He's a good man, just one who made bad choices. Kind of like us." My mother took my hands. "What will you do with it?" I looked at them both, at the tired faces of people who had made mistakes but never stopped trying, and said, "I think I'll keep it, not as a symbol of what we lost, but what we survived." 2 days later, I drove back to the house, my house, with a single box of things. The rain had stopped for good, and the air smelled of new beginnings. The porch still creaked the same way it used to, and the oak tree out front bent gently in the breeze like it was welcoming me home. Inside, everything was spotless. The furniture was covered, the floors gleamed, and a note sat on the kitchen counter in handwriting I recognized instantly. "Fixed the roof, repainted the porch, and left the keys where they belong. Take care of it, and yourself. E." I stood there for a long time, staring at that note, tears welling and spilling freely. There was no dramatic reunion, no grand apology, no cinematic kiss, just closure, clean, quiet, and kind. The kind of ending that doesn't hurt, it just lets you breathe again. I walked through each room slowly, fingertips tracing walls that had held laughter, arguments, promises, and pain. In the living room, I found the small frame I'd given my parents the day they moved in, a photo of us smiling on the porch. I set it back on the mantel where it belonged. The next morning, I invited my parents over. They arrived with coffee and a nervous energy that felt almost childlike. My mother gasped when she saw the place. "It's beautiful," she whispered. My father looked around, awe softening his voice. "You could have sold it and walked away." "I thought about it," I admitted. "But this house isn't just about us anymore. It's about second chances, for all of us." We sat on the porch for hours that day, talking about everything and nothing. Memories, regrets, new beginnings. At one point, my mother took my hand and said, "I don't think I ever told you how proud I am of you. Not because of what you've done, but because of who you've become."
My throat tightened. "I don't have to say it," I said softly. "I know." My father smiled faintly. "You sound like your mother." "Good," I said. "That means I'm finally home." When they left that evening, I stood on the porch watching their car disappear down the street. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, the same way it had the day I first handed them the keys years ago. I took a deep breath, letting the light wash over me, and for the first time, the house didn't feel like a burden or a symbol of everything I'd lost. It felt alive again, a reflection of all the love that had been buried under pride and pain, now unearthed, breathing. I made myself a cup of tea, sat by the window, and opened my phone. A new message blinked at the top of the screen. From Evan. Just 2 words. "You okay?" I stared at it, smiling softly. There was no bitterness left in the memory of him, only gratitude. I typed back, "Yeah, finally." Then I set the phone down and looked out at the oak tree swaying in the twilight. The porch light flickered on by itself, as if the house already knew what I did, that some homes aren't meant to keep you forever. Some are built to teach you what you can let go of and what's worth holding on to. I closed my eyes, breathing in the quiet, and whispered, "Thank you." Not to him, not to them, but to the version of me that had carried all that weight and finally learned how to set it down. The storm was over, the house was still standing, and so was I.